Welcome to FrameOne. I'm Drysen, and today I'm hanging out with Maddie Peschong. And I have to admit, I'm a big fan of your resume. You're a photographer. You own this studio space for shooting in today. Mm-hmm. You have the Take It Personally podcast. You are a branding coach, and you've given speeches across the country at various, conferences. And you're a mom.
Yeah.
That's kind of a lot going on.
It is. You make me sound cooler than I am. You should follow me around.
No. I think you do that naturally by yourself. So, hey, thank you for being on FrameOne.
Yeah,
Super appreciate
thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the goal of FrameOne is to explore the emotional journey of the creative leaders within the creative industry as they switch from full-time employment to their businesses, basically. Mm-hmm. And considering that you have a really cool story, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, but I should warn you that this is completely unscripted. Like, I didn't bring notes today, so whatever happens is like, it's all good. So, with that said, let's kind of like paint the picture back when you first left your full-time job. If I understand correctly, you were working at a studio here, or not a studio, but an agency in Sioux Falls. You had your photography as kind of a side gig, grew that up through weddings and everything else, and then kind of had to make a choice.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, totally. So I had worked at a really great digital marketing agency for about 3 years, and I absolutely loved it. I am maybe a bit of a strange entrepreneur in that I always really liked my day job. Mm-hmm. There were definitely parts of me that was excited to pursue entrepreneurship full time. I have like an aversion to 8 a.m., so that's definitely part of it. But for the most part, like I liked going into an office, and I loved my coworkers. I loved my clients. It was really fun. But I also had this side hustle, this photography business, and it was growing pretty quickly. And so was my career. And it felt like I really had to pick one. Like, I wasn't doing a very good job at either one because I was stretched really thin. And we had just had our second baby, my husband and I. And so it was just a lot. And so I knew that I was kind of on the precipice of like needing to make a decision. And it felt like, well, I can either double down at work and climb the corporate ladder and probably really like it, probably be very successful.
But then you have 8 a.m.s.
But then 8 a.m., man, that's a tough call. Yeah. When it came down to it, I really couldn't imagine. It felt like I was so close to something really great, and I couldn't imagine not giving it a go and at least seeing what happened in my business. And so I went in and talked to my boss and gave 2 weeks notice, but said I would love to like stay during a transition period if you don't want to kick me out right now. They're lovely. So they took me up on it. So I actually worked for another 6 weeks, kind of helping a new person come in. And that was challenging, right? Because I'm like excited to not have 8 a.m.s anymore. But I wanted to leave on a really good note. And so that was kind of a slow burn, which is kind of the theme of a lot of my career. And then it was like June 30th of 2018. That was my last day. Wow. And so I've been doing this since then, but there's been a lot of iterations to it. When I quit my job, I was a wedding photographer. And I'm very thankful to wedding photography because it 100% allowed me to be in a financial position to leave my full-time job. But I never felt super connected to wedding photography. I had friends who loved it. Like, they could spend every weekend shooting weddings, and that was not my story. I always liked it when I was there, but I knew that wasn't the end all be all for me. And so I spent the next couple of months just kind of figuring out what is the thing that I want to do for the next however many years.
So talk to me a little bit more about that time frame when you knew you had to make a switch between your photography or going up the corporate ladder. What were some of the challenges you're facing at that point? Why was it very apparent that you had to pick one versus just continuing on?
Honestly, it felt like this is dramatic, but it felt like I was failing. It felt like I couldn't give 100% to my job, and that made me feel so guilty because, like I said, I loved my coworkers, I loved my clients, and I felt like I wasn't doing as good of a job as I could be doing. And I felt the same way in my business, and I felt the same way at home. And that guilt was really getting to me, feeling like I couldn't be a fully like present mom because I would get home from my job and then immediately go into my office or spend weekends at a wedding or with clients instead of with my family. It was definitely like the transition of becoming a mom that made me a lot more protective of my time. So that was a really big part of that feeling of like, I can't give anything my all because I'm stretched so utterly thin.
True. I could totally see where you're coming from there. But the other part about that too I'm curious about is when you're starting a new venture, the time and the hours you have to put into growing that, can be just as demanding as one full-time job, I guess, as both.
100%. Yeah.
So how did you find that balance, I guess, where you're able to focus on your photography, but able to scale back and actually still be present for your family?
So there was definitely a transition period, and sometimes I still feel like I'm in it. I think the strangest part to going from being employed to working for myself is that I have no one to answer to. I'm the only person that I answer to. And I always have thought that I'm a very ambitious person, and I am, but I can also sloth with the best of them. And that was really hard, being like, okay, the only person telling me to keep my butt in this chair is me, you know? So you have to, I think, really quickly find like what the passion is that keeps you in that chair. Because it's very easy to want to, watch Netflix over your lunch break and suddenly it's been 3 hours. I've definitely been there. I think another piece of it is while I was building my business in the background, when I had my day job, I was really aware that I probably someday wanted to do this full time. And so when it came to like setting my pricing and setting my capacity, I was really conscious of what those numbers needed to look like, even 5 years before I quit my job. So then by the time I quit my job, my pricing was already in a place where I always say I want to work part-time hours for a full-time income. And that's, shifted through the years. But for the most part, I would say that's pretty true still. And I was able to do that because I spent, 5-7 years kind of doing that in the background of my full-time job. I talk to a lot of creatives who have side hustles, and they always feel really guilty for charging what someone who's like full-time would charge. That comes up a lot. And that's always really interesting to me because I feel like if you have a full-time job and a side hustle, you should be paid more than somebody who's...
Because you're working more.
Right, totally. And that was always my thought. And again, I think that transition to becoming a mom was a big part of that. It was like, if this is going to take me away from my family at night, then I want to be paid appropriately. I want to be paid what I want to be paid. And so it wasn't always like people weren't necessarily knocking down my door for higher prices, but it set me up for a lot of success when I finally did quit my job because I didn't have to do anything to my prices. They were where they needed to be for me to work a couple of days a week and then have flexibility. So
from a financial standpoint, there wasn't really a leap saying, okay, I've got to make this thing now. I've got to charge more. You've already put that in place.
Right.
Was there quality of work where you're like, am I good enough to be full-time?
Oh, yeah, 100%, totally. And that, I feel like that's just kind of an ebb and a flow over the years. Like I'll have times where I'm like, oh my God, I'm awesome. My work is so good. Everything is great. And then literally last week, I was like, this is trash. I suck. Who pays me for this? Take my camera. It just kind of, it's an ebb and a flow, right? And I think that happens as we kind of up level as creatives too. Like there comes a point when you look back at past work and you're like, oh, I'm much better than that now. My skills have really grown. It doesn't mean that your work then was trash. It just means you've gotten better. I also think as creatives, there's no one who's harder on us than we are.
Absolutely.
So that's a really hard thing to navigate too, that kind of middle ground of like wanting to constantly strive to be better and to flex that creativity, but also to realize that like your clients are probably a lot less hard on you than you are on you. And so chill out a little bit.
Absolutely. So I'm curious then, when it was time to make the leap and go to full-time self-employment, what was your confidence in your ability to make this thing work? How did you feel about that?
That's such a great question. I think, I was having a conversation with my husband a couple weeks before I gave my notice. And at the time I wasn't going to give my notice. And I was just kind of dreaming to him and saying, someday if I quit my job, we can put the kids in part-time daycare and we can do all these things, right? My kids are in full-time daycare, just to be clear. But I had all these dreams and I had spent years having these conversations with him. My husband is really laid back and non-confrontational. And he looked at me and he was like, Maddie, I don't want to hear another word about someday if you quit your job until you walk into this house and tell me you're putting your 2 weeks in.
Wow.
He's never been that
he
direct
put the smack
to me.
Down there.
He put the smack down. He did it very lovingly, but he was just like, I'm sick of your shit. Like, do it or don't do it. I don't care, but like commit, And I was like, whoa, okay. And I kind of took time to myself for a couple of days and then decided to do it. And what I kept coming back to in that time period after Jeff had kind of said that, and I was like, do I do it? Was I will make it work. Like I have a track record of making things work, And if it doesn't work, if worst case scenario, like I just fail and it's a fiery mess, I'm not leaving on a bad note. These people are supportive of me, and I bet if I came back a year from now and said that was stupid, do you have an opening for me, or do you know of someone, or could I put your,
You could have an in,
yeah,
get back
can
in.
I put my name on your list or whatever? I feel like there would be an open door. And so I actually felt confident that I would make it work, even if making it work meant finding another full-time job.
So you felt this was going to work then. I'm curious as far as like the first, because you said that wedding photography was like what got you the financial level to be able to do that. At what point were you like, I need to find my right niche after you've become full-time employed? Because you left the wedding industry to focus on a commercial and branding.
Yes, I did. So it was actually the wedding industry that kind of pointed me in the direction of branding. I realized that at weddings, my favorite part of the day was working with the other vendors. And then after a wedding, I would send them images. So if I was shooting an invitation suite or a wide shot of a venue or a dress, all the images that I would be getting anyway for the bride, I would also send those, about a week after the wedding to the vendors and just say like, I love your work. This was so fun. Please feel free to use these in your marketing. I didn't charge them or anything. And that was so fun. And it was so gratifying. They never really expected it. I think now that's a bit more commonplace, but this was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So they didn't expect it. And, seeing them use those photos on social media and seeing the impact that those photos could have on their business, like them being able to show up more confidently and market their business and make more money because of this like visual asset that I had given them, I was like, okay, this is so cool. And then around the same time, I started sharing more of myself on social media. I had been doing that, but when you're like marketing yourself and it's do or die, you gotta go. And so I started doing more of that. And what that looked like was either me setting up a tripod with a camera or getting my settings right and handing the camera to Jeff and saying, don't screw this up. And my friends who were photographers noticed, and they said, could you do photos like that for me? I want to have more of these like beyond a headshot. And so that's how it started. And then once I realized that this was called brand photography and personal brand photography, and like this is something I could be paid for, and it did a really cool job of marrying my love of visuals and also my love of marketing and digital, which is the world that I came from in my job. I was like, oh my God, this is it. It was like, the heavens opened up and it was great.
So when that light bulb went off, you're like, okay, this is a thing. I can actually get paid for this. What was your thought process around centering your business, transitioning your business really from weddings and families to branding?
My thought process was, how the F do I do this?
Okay, still confident, but questioning.
Always questioning. Yeah, so I had friends who I knew needed photos, and so I started, doing more sessions for them. And then I'm a big Googler. That's basically how I figured out how to start a business and operate a camera. And I found a Facebook group called Let's Collab, and it's basically connecting, I don't even know if it's still in existence, but it's connecting shop owners and photographers.
Okay.
And you essentially trade product for photography. And I joined this group, and a lot of the time the products like weren't something that I would be interested in shooting, just like personally. Other people would love them, but I'm like, no, I don't think I could do that really well. And then I had it in my head that I wanted to do like a children's brand. And there was this brand, a children's pajama company that posted. And I think I was so thirsty. I was like the first person to comment. And I'm like, I'll do it. And she's like, okay, like I'm going to send you 3 pieces for this shoot, or 6 or something. It was minimal. And I got all my mom friends from my job that I had just left, and I was like, bring your babies, come to my studio. I at the time I rented a studio. I wasn't even renting it full time at that point. I like spent money to rent this studio. I got a bunch of coffee from Caribou and like tried to make it this whole experience for these moms and babies. My assistant and I was working with an assistant. She had been helping me, and so she like planned out this shot list and everything, and we shot these 6 pieces and sent them to the client. And she was like, we love these. We're actually looking for a full-time photographer. Are you interested? And the brand is called Little Sleepies. They've since gotten really, really big. At the time, though, they were small. She actually, I think, left her corporate job around the same time I did, which was really cool.
No kidding.
And when we first started working together, we would shoot together a couple times a year, and then it became quarterly, and then it became monthly. And by the time the relationship ended, it was like every couple of weeks. They just had exploded. And I credit a lot of my success to them, because that was really what filled my calendar when I was like, how do we do this? How do I make this work? And it felt like a gamble, because I was investing a decent amount of money to make this one shoot really freaking awesome, and just hoping that it paid off, and it did. So it was a lot of luck, but it's a cool story.
There's something to be said about, if you want to do something, you have to show it, and because nobody's going to hire you for something you've never done before.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it's kind of cool how you're like able to like try it out and say, okay, yes, I can do this, and then it kind of led to success. One thing I noticed through that entire story there was between the wedding photography, you would hand out photos to the vendors about their services. That Facebook group, you're connecting and communicating. So it sounds like a network is a really important part of your business model, just talking to people, networking things. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on social media. I'm a big fan of SEO. I love digital marketing, and even still, the number one driver in my business is word of mouth. It's referrals. And so I really think my number one like marketing tool is a client experience, and making sure that that's really killer. And not only a client experience for my clients, but also just like a human experience with other people, like the people coming into, when I was shooting for this pajama company, the people coming in to, bring me their kid to model, they're not paying me money, but they're still part of the experience. And a lot of those women have gone on to hire me for personal brand shoots, for commercial shoots, for headshot photography. And I think it's because of the experience that I gave them. Even when they weren't paying me, they were just kind of in my orbit. Yeah, exactly. And that's always been something that's been really important to me. I think I don't claim to be the best photographer. I think I'm skilled, but I think a lot of people are skilled. But I'm good at experience, and I'm good at making sure that you feel like you're like my VIP client. And I've also faltered at that, right? Like, I think all of us have high hopes to be able to offer an experience like that, and then suddenly you have too many clients at one time and stuff slips through the cracks. But that's the place I always come back to, is like, how can I make this an incredible experience?
How has that been a challenge over the years? Like, because I imagine not all shoots are the same. So you're working with different people. Maybe you're not working with somebody directly. How do you give someone that is not in your studio, that might be somewhere else, the same experience as those moms you were filming, shooting?
I think a lot of it is just treating people the way you want to be treated. And that's what I'm thinking of, whether I'm like in my DMs on social media, or talking to someone at a shoot, or talking with a client. It's just like little conversations, and asking them how their day is, and complimenting them. I think this is so simple, but I think too often we don't say things that we're thinking, like, I really like your shirt, or like, you look really nice today, stuff like that. We're like, so what are they going to think? They're going to think I'm weird.
101.
Yeah, they're going to think I'm weird, or they're going to think if I compliment this shirt that I hated the last shirt, It's like, no, like, we're just, everyone just wants that acceptance, and I think that's what we're all looking for. And so if I can give them that little sliver of like, I see you and I accept you.
It takes a confident and bubbly personality to do something like that, though. To be able to say like, hey, you look fantastic today. I love your hair.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone feels comfortable doing that.
100%.
Is there tips or tricks that you've like through your coaching that you've helped people like say, this is how you do that?
So yes, and my number one tip, they hate it, is you got to start. You got to start doing that. Like, if there's something that you want to become more of, you've got to start. I think that we think that confidence is going to come like before we do whatever it is, wanting to create a better gym routine, or eat healthier, or do more public speaking. Like, we think that confidence will show up on our doorstep, and then we can do that thing, right? Then we can say hi to the person who passes us in the mall, whatever it might be. But confidence actually comes after, and confidence is a muscle that you build over time. So you have to start doing the thing if you want to get more confident doing that thing.
I love that. So moving forward through your career, you started photography, you started the podcast, you have given speeches at different conferences across the country. How is that progression from just, I'm a photographer, to now I'm like leading workshops on this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Someone was asking me about this this morning, actually, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, God, she was like, how'd you have the confidence to like start doing this? And I was like, I don't know. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, what? I should not have been doing that. I learned a lot. I learned from it. But yeah, I look back on like the Maddie that was leading a workshop in 2019, and I was like, that girl did not know what she was doing. Like, no, but I did it, you know. So
Was the information back then still valid?
Yes, it was about social media. And so I think that that's where a lot of the confidence came from. Was I had just come from a job where I was being paid
to do that.
Yeah, to do social media, to do digital media. I had a background in that. And that, I think, was a really big part of it. It was like, well, it was a transactional thing then, and this can be transactional too. I'm just teaching someone else instead of someone at work. So I do think that was a part of it. But it's definitely been a transition. And I would say I have felt more insecurity around coaching in the last year than
Really?
I ever have before. Yeah.
Why is that?
I think because I know more. I didn't know then what I didn't know.
You had like ignorance was a blessing back
100%.
then.
Absolutely. It totally was. And now I know that I know nothing.
I think that's a sign that you've mastered your craft, honestly.
Yeah, I was reading something about that the other day. That's like, that is totally what happens, because in order to get better at something, you have to just like surround yourself. Like, I listen to so many personal development and professional development podcasts and books, and I go to the trainings and I do the whatever. I've spent a lot of money on myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm completely unqualified. But I have found the niche, the thing that I'm qualified enough in to be able to do this. Yeah.
You've taken this time, you've invested into yourself, you've gained all this information, and now you're able to kind of like give it back to the community and create this branding company now where you're able to coach people along. Tell me a little bit about the origins of that, because it's one thing to go out and show people physical products. Here's your photograph. To tell somebody, I'm confident, I'm qualified, and I know what I'm talking about, enough for you to pay me to teach you this.
Yeah.
That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, that's where all the insecurities came from. I think I spent the first couple years being like, this is fun, this is great. And then, in the last year, I'm like, I'm literally selling myself and these people are paying me for me. And that makes me want to throw up. Yeah, totally. So I think that a big part of me feeling the confidence that I feel now compared to even 9 months ago has been a really big shift in my niche.
Yeah.
And this has been a theme of my business. Like, when I started to pivot into brand photography, and then eventually I let everything else go, I only do brand photography. I've made a similar transition in coaching. I started out saying I coach creatives. Any creative, I got you. And to an extent, I am capable of that, but it's much harder because I just can't relate to like a graphic designer or an interior decorator the same way that I can relate to a photographer, specifically a photographer who wants to move into brand photography.
Yeah, it's a pretty specialized niche.
Exactly. And I've done it, and at this point I've had clients who have done it and I've helped them with it. And so that's kind of been the transition over the past 9 months. And it started with just this like kind of inkling of, that sounds really fun. Like, it sounds really fun to be able to work with only brand photographers and specifically help them pivot to shoot brands. It felt like a really scary, honestly irresponsible decision, because at this point I had a coaching program, and every time I launched it, I would make 5 figures. And to just say, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do this other thing and cut my audience by 3/4.
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows how many? Okay, that feels really irresponsible. It feels like a lot of like money left on the table. And I had to just get really clear that felt right. Like, that felt like the next step that I needed to take, as opposed to honestly continuing to kind of try and spread myself too thin and be everything to everybody.
I'm amazed by the pivots that you've had throughout your career, from, I'm full-time employed, to pivoting to wedding photography, to pivoting to brand photography, to pivoting to coaching. That's pretty cool that your business continues to evolve every few years like that. When you find yourself ready to pivot again, like, what are some like I'm gonna say warning signs, for lack of a better term, like things you're like,
Ooh.
I need to like kind of follow this niche here a little bit more. I'm drawn to this over here. What's that look like for you?
For me, it's one of two things, and usually both of them first, which is you find yourself hating certain things about your job or loving certain things about your job, or both. So for me with photography, it was like I found myself not, dreading these weddings. And again, I always liked them when I was there, but leading up to them, I just dreaded it. Like I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't want to leave my kids. And that was a really big indicator that like I can't keep doing this if that's not fair to my client. That's not fair to me, my family. So that's usually a big indicator. And then on the flip side, doing things and being like, oh my God, this is so fun. I wonder what it would look like if my business was just this, like if this was the thing that I did. And for all the pivots that I've had in my career, that's exactly how it starts. It's this thought of like, what if, like, this could be really fun. And I have definitely found that I need to follow that. When I'm having fun, I think it shows and people are drawn to that, and the right people find that.
People just want to have fun. They want to relate with people that they relate with.
Exactly. Yeah. Business should be fun. Like it should be something that you enjoy. We spend far too many hours working for it to be drudgery. And to be able to show people, specifically burnt out photographers, that like it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to work nights and weekends. You don't have to trade time for money. Like it can be a lot more fun. You can make a lot more money. And like, what do you want? That's so exciting.
I always tell myself that businesses are black and white, but the people within are not.
Yeah, so exactly.
I like that you're. I see a similar trope. I like that. I like that.
Totally.
So talk to me a little bit about how you got into the speaking at conferences. What was that first invite like? Did you have to reach out for it? How did that go?
Oh yeah, I definitely had to reach out. I think I had gotten someone locally had asked me to speak at I think it was Student AdFed Day.
Okay.
Like that was the first time that I spoke outside of a work environment, like giving a presentation at work. And they reached out and asked if I would speak, and I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And then COVID happened, and so we were kind of on the other side of that, coming out of COVID a bit. The conferences were starting to open back up, and I was having coffee with a friend who has done a lot of speaking, and I said, I want to do more speaking this year. That's on my bucket list. And she was like, awesome. What conferences? Who have you reached out to? What's in your media kit? And I was like, excuse me?
What's a media kit? And that is me asking you.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I assumed that people would just call me.
Right? I'm awesome. I'm over here.
She's like, no, that's not what happens.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I was like, and then once I thought about it, I was like, oh my God, of course. Like what, ridiculous to think that people are going to be banging down my door. I heard you wanted to speak, even though you told no one. And so that was really how it started. And she said, I speak at this conference every year. It's called the Reset Conference. I really love it. It's the type of conference where people just kind of leave their egos at home and everyone's equal playing field. And I was like, that sounds like my jam. Because I think in any industry, you get, kind of the cool kids.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I wasn't interested in that. And so she was like, this is the conference for you. And so I applied and got accepted to speak. And that was my first experience of speaking, out of state and staying in a hotel room before.
It was fancy.
So fancy.
So from the moment you made the decision that I want to do public speaking and lead a workshop or lead an event like that, to making it fruition, come to be, what were the steps you had to take to do something like that?
I had to figure out what the hell I was going to talk about.
It's a good place to start. Yeah.
Honestly, that's been a major evolution over even just the past 18 months or so. The talk that I gave was actually is it the antithesis? Is that the beginning of something?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Sure. I'll dictionary it later. I'm not a smart man.
The talk that I gave was the beginning of the program that I now run called Rebrand. And it was essentially about pivoting into brand photography. So it was geared toward specifically wedding photographers, but really any photographer who was interested in like scaling to make 6 figures and like all these things that were kind of promised when you look at educators in the industry, but generally we're kind of told that you need to do weddings in order to do that.
Because that's where the money's at.
That's where the money is at, but it's not. And so that's what the talk was about. And I walked off the stage, and a client of mine who I had been coaching for a couple of months, and she's become a really good friend of mine. I walk off the stage and I was like, Amanda, that's a course. And she's like, yep, that's a course. Like, that's something for sure. And I spent the next year being like, nope, no, it's not. Because
it's amazing how those opportunities will just pop up out of nowhere.
Yep.
And you have to chase them.
Totally. Yeah. And I was scared. I was so terrified because I had this really successful program. And it just felt like I knew, just capacity wise, I'm not the kind of person who can do like 2 things at once like that. So I knew, again, I had to pick one, and it felt really irresponsible. And I ended up being like, oh, screw it. Like, let's just see what happens. And it was my most successful launch yet. It's my largest program yet. Wow. And I feel like I have the best clients in the world right now because they're my people.
That's so cool. I love that. So I'm very intrigued here because this is episode 2 of FrameOne. And I'm noticing a trend already where people are confident that I'm not going to fail. I've got this. They just believe in themselves, basically. Throughout the years, there's obviously some learning curves, some ups and downs. Talk to me about sometimes you had some struggles, sometimes you failed, or some things that you had to overcome.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest thing, which is honestly probably why I did decide to do rebrand, is this is so embarrassing. I've never talked about this publicly before.
Oh boy, a FrameOne exclusive.
So I had been doing this group coaching program called The Confident Creative, and it was geared toward creative. So we had interior designers and writers and a lot of photographers, but like plenty of people who weren't. And I held a retreat for them. And I was really struggling coming up with content because it needed to serve everybody. Yeah. And so it just felt like everything that I was doing, it felt really watered down. Like I couldn't go very deep because I had to be pretty broad. Yeah. And I was really nervous, and a couple of things. I didn't prepare as well as I should have. But I also wasn't confident in my material because it wasn't exactly what I wanted.
Right.
Lots of things. And it felt like I crashed and burned. And I think if you were to ask the women who were there, they would say it was fine. Maddie was not on her best game, but like I had a nice time. Right. And I've since talked to a lot of them, and that is what they've said. I don't know if they're lying.
Oh, they're honest.
Fine. Keep lying. Keep lying to me. But I really enjoy speaking. I really enjoy presenting, and that was the only time in my life that like the entire almost the entire time I was up there at the front of the room, I felt like I was dying inside. I was like, this is not, I don't feel, like when you're speaking and you're like, I'm on, I've got
Absolutely.
this. It's the opposite of that.
Oh no.
I've never experienced that in my life. It was awful. I drove home and just sobbed, and I sent a voice text message to my business coach, and she was like, can we hop on a FaceTime when you get home? And so she FaceTimed me, and I sobbed some more, and I sobbed to my husband, and I was just like, I don't know what is wrong, but this is wrong. This is bad. I'm failing. This is not, it was very dramatic in my mind and my body. Right. I don't know if it was as obvious to anyone else. Again, lie to me. But it was like, it felt like a crash and burn. And I think that was for sure the 2-day period where I was like, this is wrong. I can't continue trying to be everything to everybody. These people don't want that for me. Like, they care about me. They want me to love what I do. And I can't bring, my own like special magic if I'm trying to do all the things, know? Right. So that was really when I got sick of my own crap and was just like, screw it. Like, let's try this rebrand thing. Let's only coach for photographers and just see what happens. But I had to like have a complete breakdown for you
to pick a lane.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that once you had that realization of, okay, I'm going to focus on this one thing that I'm going to be really good at, but I'm going to own it. I'm assuming that some things just really took off for you.
I feel like that's where I'm at right now. Yeah. I mean, it's been a really good couple of months. Rebrand started in October.
And so it's fresh.
Wow. It's very fresh. Yeah. So we're just about to end the first round, and we'll start again in April. And I feel I feel like I'm on that precipice of like, this could be really big, and I'm really excited for it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. So you mentioned something in that last bit there where you have your own business coach.
Yes.
Talk to me about the importance of having a good mentor.
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything. I started working with her in January, like early 2019. So it was about a couple months after I had quit my job and was just kind of looking. I came from a corporate and then agency world where professional development was just part of the game. And so I felt like, well, if I'm a grown-up businesswoman, I'm going to have a portion of my budget devoted to professional growth.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for a conference, and her and I had been social media friends. We kind of knew each other in like a past life, long story. So we had just stayed in touch. And I saw that she was enrolling for this program. She called it a mastermind. And I was like, what the hell is a mastermind? And we were having a conversation about what it was. And it was new to her too. I think she had only been doing it for like 6 months or a year or something. And she said, this could be really fun. We've never had a photographer before. And that made me so curious, because at the time I was very much just a photographer, and there is nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying that because that was my job description.
Title. That was your entire life.
That's what I did.
Career-wise.
And the way that she phrased, we've never had a photographer before, that's what it was. We've never had a photographer before. There's so much we could do. I was like, I take photos, ma'am.
I was going to say, like, the first, like, we've never had a photographer before. That would make me feel super insecure. Like, oh my God, why?
Partly, yes. Yeah, totally. But then the way she was like, this is really exciting. There's so much we could do. And at the time I was starting to sell presets, and I had a really successful first launch with that. And so I was like dabbling, but still very much photography focused. And I was just like, is there more to this than photography? Which honestly, I was craving. Like, that was the hardest part about leaving my full-time job, was like, I really like doing this. And I don't know if I want to pick up a camera for the rest of my life. Like, that feels like a long time, you know? And so that conversation with her followed, I mean, I'm indecisive when it comes to those big investments.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of back and forth, but that's what I kept coming back to, of like, there's like more that's possible here than I even know.
I think there's so many of us in the creative field that are like, you know, I'm doing this now. Either I'm a photographer, I'm a motion designer, I'm going to do this for the foreseeable future, but maybe not forever.
Yeah.
But it's hard to imagine what the next level is, because in a corporate ladder, you go, okay, cool. I'm going to move up. I'm going to move up. I'm going to move up. But when you're self-employed, what's next?
Totally. And that can be a really scary feeling, to not know what's next. And I have spent time, I mean, my husband, he doesn't do this anymore because I think I've just like beat it out of him. Like, now he's just like, whatever, I trust you. But there was definitely a time, like when I was shooting seniors, where he was like, you're not going to be able to always relate to 18-year-olds. And he was right. Like, that absolutely, I reached a point where I was like, this is dumb. I don't want to do
That was
this
a big reason I left the wedding industry, honestly.
Me too. Yeah. And the same thing happened with weddings. And so he was always like, there's going to come a point where you're not like this bubbly, young, fun person that people can relate to. Yep. And he's spot on. And I think I used to spend time worrying about that. And now, I mean, I've seen it play out in my own business. I'll just pivot. Like, I'll just do something else. It will probably, something will probably happen before I need to pivot that tells me I need to pivot. You know what I mean?
So another opportunity will pop up, and you're like, there it is.
I'll develop a new passion. I really like baking cakes right now. I'm not turning that into a business.
You say that.
I'm not turning that into a business, not at all. But yeah, like, people are like, we are human, and humans change, and that's the beauty of personal branding, is being able to kind of pivot, and your business can come with you. But it also, I think there's a lot of comfort in that, because I no longer feel like I'm gonna shoot for the next 10 years and then someday, you know, at the 10-year mark, I'm no longer gonna, like, no one's gonna hire me anymore. There's gonna be steps that happen before that, you know?
I think one of my favorite quotes is that I am under no obligation to be the person I was 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. But we feel an obligation, don't we?
We really do.
Yeah.
As far as like business tips, because you've learned a few things having multiple versions of your business, so to speak. What's one big tip that you've learned what is one big business tip you've learned since going full-time freelance or full-time self-employed to where you are today? Something that if like a new person would be like, I'm going to go freelance, or I'm going to start my own little company, you'd be like, do this?
So I think for me, it's two-part. I think that it's really important to marry like the practical side of business with the more like ooey gooey mindset stuff that like honestly I've fought for a long time. And if we're talking about the mindset stuff, I would say it's fully possible to build a business by being yourself, doing whatever the hell you want to do. And it's a lesson that I continue to learn.
So powerful to say it like that.
It's a lesson that I continue to learn. I mean, even just if you look just at the photography industry, there are so many, and if you don't know what these are, like go out and try to find them, because there are so many cool success stories of people being like, I don't want to shoot weddings. I want to shoot families, but I want to average $2,000 a session. And they do it. Like it's totally possible, you know? It's possible to not work nights and weekends. It's possible to have flexibility to pick your kids up from school or to take a vacation in Hawaii for a month every year.
So let's talk about that a little bit from the mentality of, you know, everyone around here is charging pennies, but I want to be a premium service.
Yep.
What does that ladder look like?
Yeah. So the flip side of what I would tell a business owner just starting out, the more practical thing is to get really, oh God, this sounds really gross, but like get really intimate with your numbers, know what your numbers are, and know what your goals are too. And I think really what it comes down to is figuring out like, what do I want to make in a year? What's that goal? What does that mean every single month? And what does that mean from a services and capacity perspective? So if I want to make $5,000 a month, how many sessions is that? You know, how much do I want to work? And it's first setting that up so you're not throwing spaghetti at the wall, and you actually have like, okay, I want to book 4 sessions a month and they need to each be $1,500, whatever it might be. And then it's figuring out, okay, $1,500 a session, that's a little higher than what a lot of people are doing around here. How can I create a killer experience that makes people say worth it?
So it's the experience, not
It's
necessarily the price
100%
tag.
the experience. It's never the price tag. If you have an issue with people not buying, you don't have a pricing issue. You probably have a brand issue.
I feel like I was going to follow up this next question here, but I feel like that kind of answers it, because there are a lot of photographers in the area. And I'm sure that's going to be true no matter what city you go to.
Yeah.
Photography is a very accessible, easy industry to get into. What sets you apart from, you know, next person down the street? How do you differentiate yourself from the next person down the street?
Yeah. I think one of the most challenging parts is figuring out what that differentiator is, like what makes you special. And for me, a lot of it has been figuring out the niche that I really want to serve and then doing it really well. When I first started doing brand photography, it was easier to set myself apart because there weren't a lot of brand photographers. So there wasn't like a price scale that people could compare me to.
Yeah.
It's becoming where there's more brand photographers or people offering brand photography, and so I've had
Look at you being a trailblazer, trendsetter.
well, some of them I've coached, and so I'm like, yeah, let's go. Yeah, it's exciting to see, like, because it's a need, right? Like there are so many businesses in town that could use brand photography, and so I've had to work really hard to make sure that I'm continuing to differentiate myself. Some of that is in my marketing and things just like using my voice when I'm writing social media captions or emails. Some of it is in the actual client experience that I am providing, making sure that I'm not just showing up to a session and shooting. I'm providing an experience, whether that, you know, people always want to go to like client gifts.
Yeah.
That can totally be part of it. I love like a swaggy gift. Super fun. But it can also be, do you want to hop on a Zoom call and talk through what outfits you're going to bring? Like I can tell you're kind of stressed about that, you know? Or sending a lot of what I do is sending like blog posts ahead of time that help them pick out outfits and props and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Honestly, I think the root of client experience is communication. And I think a lot of creatives struggle with communication because they're trying to do too much and they're trying to be too much. And so just having the automated emails set up that say, hey, your session is next week. Hey, I had a great time at your session. Here's a prop, you know, this is not in the right order, obviously, but here's a prop list of what you can bring, or here's a call scheduler if you want to hop on a Zoom call with me. Just like those touch points. A lot of the time, whether it's brand photography, wedding photography, people are paying us, and then it's like 6 weeks to 12 months before the session, before the wedding. And a lot of trust can be gained in that period of time, but also not if you're not trying to earn it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people show up at like weddings or sessions and they're like, well, it was really obvious that my client didn't trust me. Like they didn't trust the poses I was putting them in or the timeline that I suggested. And my question is always, well, what are you doing to gain that trust? And a lot of the time they're like, oh, I'm not doing anything. And that's totally fine, but then let's change that.
Right. How do we build upon that? So you sparked 2 questions. I'm gonna give you the option of which one you want to answer here.
Oh, okay.
On one hand, because you are niching down and turning things away and refining your business, I hear that there's power in saying no over here on this side. On the other side, automation and outsourcing and that kind of side. Which one would you like to talk about? Power of no or outsourcing? Outsourcing? All right. How do you feel about outsourcing?
I love it.
And moving on.
It's the best ever. I think way too many creatives no, I should not say creatives. Way too many people think that they are the only person who can do this one thing well. And what I have found is that I'm pretty terrible at doing a lot of things. Actually, there are people who specialize in the things that you're not good at. And so I have definitely found that, like, I think a really great example, especially for creatives, is like a bookkeeper or an accountant. I 100% save money paying $200 at this point. For my business, there's a lot of different pieces. And so I think I pay like $250 a month for like accounting, for just the photography business. And I save money 110%. I save money because if I had to get into QuickBooks every month which like sometimes I poke around, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I absolutely save money, and I save ulcers,
Stress, headaches.
We just think that we're the only people that can do something the way that we want it done. And I think it's 2-part. It's realizing that that's not true, and also loosening your grip on that perfection. I see a lot of photographers spending a lot of time making sure that like edits are absolutely perfect. And I get it. It's your art. That's a beautiful thing. But there comes a point where you have to say, is my client going to notice if this is like 0.5 magenta or negative 15 magenta? Right. No, they're not. Like, they're just simply not going to.
They're going to see the emotional value. They're going to love it. And then they're going to move on.
And you know what else? They're going to think about the experience. They're going to think, I laughed so hard at that session. I've had so many times like coming home from a session where I was like, that was really fun. And then I'm editing and I deliver the photos and I'm, we're so critical of ourselves. Absolutely. I'll deliver a session and be like, oh, it's not my best work, but it's, it's fine. Like I'm not disappointed. I've done better, and the client will come back and be like, I love these. They're so great. You captured like my favorite facial expressions or whatever. They're thinking about their experience.
It sounds like, if I'm picking this up properly, the brand that you offer is more, it's your name, but it's more than just you. It's bigger than just, your critical eye for color, your critical eye for this or that. It's the overall experience that your brand offers, which is, kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that for me, and I think that that's a really cool thing that as creatives we can kind of like strive for, is having a brand that's bigger than ourselves. That's what we all want, You want to feel like you're contributing in a bigger way than just like, here's some photos, thanks,
I love it. Well, Maddie, thank you so much for being on the second episode of FrameOne. If you guys want to watch more of them, definitely like, subscribe, and all the other fun stuff. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.